Good morning, everybody. My name is Lara Deutsch. I am one of the co-founders of Where Music Leads, alongside my colleagues Dr. Cindy Tong and Dr. Amy Hillis. We are so thrilled that you're here with us today. Where Music Leads is an organization that seeks to normalize a wider range of career paths in the music industry and broaden our definition of success. So we're really excited about what that conference can do to achieve that mission. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. I'd also like to take a quick moment to thank our collaborative partner, NYO Canada, for making this conference possible, as well as our supporter, the RBC Foundation, and sponsor, Long and McQuaid. So a couple of housekeeping things before we get going. So today's sessions and most of the sessions for this weekend are going to be in a webinar format, which means generally you'll only see the panelists and hosts with their cameras on. However, there's still ways that you can participate, and we really encourage that. So first of all, we have a chat window. There you can message other participants and say, hey, I'm tuning in from Vancouver, welcome from Montreal. You can cheer on the panelists, agree with what they say, just anything you'd like to say to everybody listening, feel free to use that. That chat won't really be monitored though. So if you have questions, which we really encourage, please check the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. You'll have a chance to ask your questions. You can direct them to all the panelists. You can direct them to a single panelist. And at the end of the session for the last 20, 25 minutes or so, I will direct as many of those questions as possible to our speakers. And I know there will be many. Thanks for joining in the hundreds today. We're very, very excited to all be together for this chat. So if at any point during the session you want to learn more about any of our speakers or access more of the schedule, feel free to check out our website at www.wheremusicleads.com. So on to this morning's topic, musicians with a vision from dream to reality. This topic this morning is going to be highlighting three very, very inspiring musical entrepreneurs who have multifaceted, dynamic careers. We're going to center around why and how they each founded their own organizations, in addition to all of the other hats they wear and the things that they do. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our wonderful speakers this morning. First, we have Larissa Koniuk. Larissa is a singer, a performer, a teacher, clinician. She does everything, and she is also a founder. She is the co-founder and artistic director of the Bicycle Opera Project since 2012. And this is a company that champions new opera works and tours exclusively by bicycle, which is absolutely incredible. And I can't wait to hear more about that. I'm going to let her tell you shortly a little bit more about the project. But for now, hi, Larissa. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. We're very lucky. Next, we have Shaun Brodie. Shaun is a freelance trumpeter and session musician. He has played with many of Canada's leading indie acts, places like Letterman, amazing, amazing festivals around the world. And he is the founder and artistic director of the Queer Songbook Orchestra, which is a 14-piece professional chamber pop ensemble that uses story and song to express, honor, and elevate the 2S LGBTQ plus experience. They also have amazing projects for queer youth and classrooms, which we can't wait to hear about. So, Shaun, thank you so much for being here.
Morning, everyone. Thanks for having me.
And finally, we have Shaun Mays, who is based out of New York City and joining us today, I think, from Prague. He's a conductor, music director, orchestrator, arranger, composer, author, educator, wears all of the hats. He's the worldwide music supervisor for Disney's The Lion King, the musical. And he is also the artistic director and founder of Pops of Color, which is an orchestra of all musicians of color playing music by musicians of color and celebrating their contributions to the music world and the music industry. So, Shaun, thank you so much for joining us from halfway across the world.
It's a pleasure to be here. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. So, I'm going to jump in first. I've got many, many questions for you. I hope we can also get to all of our participants' questions. But first, I'd love to just hear a little bit from each of you about what you do, kind of all of the facets of your career, but also the project that you founded. So, why don't we start with Larissa?
Okay. Hi. I started a project called the Bicycle Opera Project, which you mentioned, with my co-founder Nadia Chana in 2012. And we created the project to sort of answer the question of, is it possible to tour as a musician without the use of a car, fuel, airplane, and can we get there on our own steam? And we organized tours around Ontario and one summer in Nova Scotia, bringing opera to communities, many of whom, because you're going short distances, you're in smaller towns. Many of these towns didn't have access to live opera. And we also were touring Canadian new opera and championing new works with living composers, which we worked directly with. That project, and now we haven't toured in a few years. We have been trying to think about other ways to make opera accessible. And we made a large scale film recently, which was like a 3 year labor of love, which kept us very, very busy. And that opera Sweat became a full length feature and actually won some awards and is still hopefully going around the world to be seen more now. And we're dreaming up our next project.
That is, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and then in other ways, I always am looking to bring people together in different ways. So I run a vocal studio, and I really emphasize on like collaborating with students and them, pushing themselves and reaching their goals in various ways. And I've started a small neighborhood community festival as well that brings neighbors together. It's called Music in Compton Park. We relocated to Kingston, Ontario. So we are bringing neighbors together. The tagline is Neighbors Making Music for Neighbors.
I love
It's
that.
very cute and family focused. And I also developed a early music program for young musicians. So lots of community things.
I love that. And I love that aspect of music making, which I think is something we'll talk a little bit more about later. By the way, as an aside, if you want to check out, I know there's a trailer online for Larissa's short film that she's talking about. It's called Sweat. It's absolutely amazing. A cappella opera, really incredibly moving. Definitely go take a look. Before we get into our chat, let's move on to Shaun Brodie. We've got two Shauns this morning. If you can tell us a little bit about what you do and also the Queer Songbook Orchestra.
Uh, yeah, thanks again for inviting me to be part of this. It's really nice to have the opportunity. Um, I'll give the quick kind of summary. I grew up playing in community and school bands and all that in Regina, Saskatchewan. Very fortunate at that time to be part of some really great programs in the city. And I just got so into it. Everything was music all the time. It's what I wanted to do. And I was very motivated to get kind of out of Saskatchewan and, to see more of the world. And also, we can get more to this later, but growing up, I was very deeply closeted. So I kind of wanted to get out of there to, be able to uh, fully realize myself and what was going on. And I didn't feel like Regina at that time was a place that I could do that. So that was another real motivating factor, and music was kind of my ticket to be able to do that. So I ended up going to UVic, University of Victoria, to do an undergrad in music performance, trumpet, and I was very focused on being an orchestral player. That's what I really loved doing, and the music I loved, and what I wanted to do. And then once I got into the program and was kind of working my way through it, I just started to realize there was more out there, and I started playing in a pop band. I started playing in a Latin band, and my dedication to orchestral symphony trumpet kind of started to wane. And by the time I finished school, I just kind of fell into playing with whoever asked me to do something. So I was doing a lot of pop stuff and indie rock, indie folk, and just sort of became one of these people who's playing in a bunch of different bands and recording and touring. And I made kind of a career out of that for 10 years or so. Um, well, sometimes, doing other jobs, odd jobs and stuff, picking things up where needed to pay the rent. And after about 10 years of having that kind of career, I started to think about the longevity of that and if it was something that was sustainable for the rest of my life. And I was feeling like it might not be a sustainable thing forever. And I would do various tours where sometimes you're sleeping in hotels, and it's nice. And sometimes you're sleeping on floors and
Hmm.
uh, piling to the van again at 8 o'clock in the morning to go wherever. And it was just a kind of a real, yeah, inconsistent kind of life to be living.
Yep.
So anyway, the short story is then I decided, okay, I'm going to put a pause on music, or I'm going to stop doing that, and I'm going to go to journalism school because I had interest in like storytelling and kind of like the unknown stories that were going on in music still, but behind the scenes. So I applied to journalism school here in Toronto at TMU. They decided they didn't need me in the program. Uh, I didn't get into the program, so I just didn't really know what I was doing. I was basically quitting music. This other door path I wanted to go down, the door was not opening. Uh, and it kind of I was just sort of adrift for a number of months. And then this idea started to form in my head that sort of combined the three things that were really like the made me who I am, I guess, which was my interest and experience in music, um, my kind of budding interest in storytelling and
Mhm.
kind of obscured narratives, and then my own queer identity and my own sexuality. So eventually those kind of like started to form this idea of putting together an ensemble that could do both those things, like play music that had to do with these sort of untold and obscured stories from a queer perspective. Um, so that kind of, I really got kind of obsessed with that idea and wondered if it was a viable thing. So I started talking to friends of mine. I knew a lot of musicians and had a lot of queer musician friends. So I started asking people if that's something they would maybe be interested in being part of, and I was getting good responses. And so we'll get into more how that all evolved, but yeah, I ended up kind of taking a leap and trying to start this ensemble, and from the first show and kind of from the get-go, it felt like it we had something. It was important and it was impactful. People were responding to it. So then I was just motivated to keep going. And I one thing I wanted to point out about that is that I was growing up a very shy person. I never would raise my hand in class to like answer a question.
Mhm.
So I never imagined myself being like a band leader or in more of a kind of a leadership sort of position. Um, but then as I grew up and was in the music world and all that, what I eventually discovered was a sort of gap in the music kind of world that I wondered if I could kind of um, fill that space, and that sort of motivated me to create something. And then I found myself in that position sort of by default.
Right.
But I wanted to mention that to people who might be shy and not see themselves being able to do something like that, because what I discovered is it totally is possible. You just have to kind of take a leap of faith and trust in yourself a bit. And it took,
Yeah.
many years of doing stuff and to kind of build confidence. But
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that story, Shaun, because I know that so many of our attendees, that's going to resonate a lot. Many parts of that are going to resonate with a lot of people. And we're going to definitely delve more into the details of that. I'm going to just jump over quickly to Shaun first to give us a little overview of what he does, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, well, thanks again for having me. It's really, really cool to be here this morning. And yeah, already really inspired. This is it's gonna be a fun hour and a bit ahead of us. But yeah, so as was already mentioned, I mean, a bit about my journey. I started off in music education. I knew pretty early on that I wanted to be a music teacher. I'm from Toronto, and I went to a public performing arts high school, got into a program in musical theater, didn't think I belonged there, and got to the program because I didn't think I could sing, and I didn't want to sing. Got to the program and ended up being immersed in the program, and also fell in love with instrumental music more directly. And that was the moment where I said, okay, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And that took me up the road to Montreal, to McGill, represent, and did the thing in music ed. And so I went through the program there, and at the same time had always had interest in conducting. I had done a lot of that work in high school as well, working with bands and ensembles and the like. But I knew that my focus really was to be an educator. That was for me my way in and my way of thinking about, okay, how do I want to give back within being an artist and being in music. And I did that for a while. I've taught through the right through the range of music. I taught mostly middle school music, even though I thought I would teach mostly high school, but as things do, taught middle school, taught high school, even taught a lot of elementary as well, and kindergarten right all the way down through. And so it was really, really wonderful. And I at a certain moment in my journey as a teacher, I got via a friend mentioned to me a position that was opening up within Disney theatricals, very specifically in New York City. And a friend contacted me and said, "Hey, I know you're a classroom teacher, and we've also worked together because you've music directed productions of mine, and we had done a master's together by that point over in just outside of London in the UK." And so he writes and he says, "Hey, there's this interesting post I think you might be interested in, where they're looking for people who specifically have music direction experience, but also come from an educational background, who will work within the education department of the theatrical division of Disney, which is Disney Theatrics specifically, based out of New York City." And I said, "Well, that's cool, but nobody just applies for work with Disney and does that." And so I did, and went through a couple of rounds, and was fortunate to have been accepted and brought into a department of incredible artists, people who doubled as artists, but also were very passionate about delivering education to New York City students. And so diving into that world of sort of the duality again of looking at my work, of using my work as an educator to support my artistry, and my artistry to support my work as an educator, I dove into that with Disney, and I was doing work in helping develop the junior musicals in schools programs, and going out into schools and teaching musicals, and with learners of all ages, which was really, really cool. And within my work as in education on the south side of the border in the US, I also started working a lot with, I had also been doing work as an orchestrator and an arranger by that point, and started to do more so specifically within the orchestral pops realm. And, so not, again, I studied classically, but had always had this sort of duality between that because of the interest in theater and in pop music. And my dad was a pop musician for a large chunk of his career. So it had always been a part of my life. And at that point, I started working with an orchestra who had an educational program, and I started going out into schools and realizing very, very quickly between that work as an educator within the orchestral realm, with my work as a conductor and my work as an orchestrator, that there was a huge gap in terms of seeing, especially in orchestral pops music, frankly, music and repertoire and orchestrators and arrangers and conductors, etc., who represented the genre. Right. I like to describe it. The organization I work for does a huge gala every single year, and they honor somebody who's very instrumental in the pop world. Right. So you have people like Alan Menken being honored, and Stephen Schwartz, and et cetera, and all incredible figures of the industry. But I like to say Quincy Jones has written every popular song written since the beginning of time, et cetera. So when you sort of go back and you start to, peel the layers of the onion back, you realize you're like, yeah, there's a lot of work to sort of bridge this gap. And so to that effect, I, for many years, had this idea of founding a new organization, a new pops orchestra that would function with two primary objectives. The first being it composed entirely of artists of color in its makeup, and two, performing works orchestrated by, composed by, arranged by, et cetera, all artists of color. And that ensemble now exists. And so I formed now the better part of, we're going on to about two-ish years at this rate, a new ensemble called Pops of Color. And so we are, again, not exclusive to New York, but we've had two concerts at the historic Town Hall venue on 43rd Street in New York City, which, if you don't know, I highly suggest that for very, very cool musical and historical reasons you check out. And we've done two major concerts there. One was in conjunction with the Whitney Houston estate, which was a concert of her music taken with orchestral, sort of redone orchestrally. And another was recently a big gala celebration that was in honor of, sort of acted as in a sense, like the equivalent of a Kennedy Center honors for Lin-Manuel Miranda, and honored his
Amazing.
contributions to everything that he's done. And yeah, so that's a bit of, and I'm, we'll get obviously into the journey of it, but it's been very, very interesting just seeing how all of those avenues have sort of connected for me. And I feel very fortunate that they have, and this organization exists now, which is
Hmm.
really cool.
And I love hearing you say that you're fortunate, and I relate to that sensation, but also it takes so much work. Like there's some luck, but I also know it takes a ton of work, and all three of you, really congratulations to all of you for having created something from nothing. That's a really big achievement, and you're doing a lot of things to help a lot of people outside of your own goals. So I kind of want to get into this a little bit. Both of the Shans, you mentioned, you identified a gap, like something was missing, and so that, I guess, was the catalyst towards creating your organization. And so, Larissa, I want to jump to you first. I read a great interview of yours where you said, we started because we were two young singers looking for opportunities, and so we decided to make our own. And I love that because I think that's really representative of 2026, what our industry is like. A lot of it is just going out there and doing your own thing rather than waiting for someone else to call you. So I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about, what that catalyst was for you with Bicycle. And my question to all of you will be, what's the first step? You have this idea of something that you want to do that is enormous. Like, how do you just take that first step, and what does that look like?
Right. Yeah, so that's very true. I was wondering, well, what is she going to say that I said in the past? But no, it still rings true. Yeah, myself and this woman I mentioned before, Nadia Chana, like two young singers fresh out of school, living in Toronto. We were talking earlier, I think it was Shaun B who was saying, like, scrapping together work to pay the rent. That
Mhm.
was very much the lifestyle, in our 20s. And we were both in a, against the grain theater. They've done really well, but when they started, they were like doing small things in bars, and we were both in the chorus in La Boheme, and the two of us would both bike to rehearsal. And I didn't actually know a lot of opera singers who rode their bikes.
Mhm.
It sort of doesn't fit with the stereotype, if you know what I mean. Like,
Yes.
your hair can't be nice, when it's under a helmet. But Nadia and I both always rode our bikes, and so we became friends immediately. And the two of us, I think, were both just at that time, you're just like aching, like you've been going through school and you're just aching to actually do the thing. And it's so
Mhm.
hard to actually start doing the real thing when you're first out of school. And so the two of us got to talking. We want to create opportunities. We're both really interested in new music and working with living composers. That was, I think, just really, yeah, what bonded us, and uh, made us want to work together. And then we really started talking about the environmental aspect. And because the two of us rode our bikes all around, and I had some friends in Toronto who were touring musicians and had actually made their own bike trailers for their instruments in the past, and I was really inspired by that. Um,
Mhm.
and more in like the folk music kind of scene. And
Yeah.
we just sort of, to answer your second question, is what, how do you take that first step? We did not, start an official organization with like, hey, we need a board of directors, any of that. We just started bravely taking a leap with $0 and just forging our own adventure. So we got musicians together who wanted to go really out on a limb and tour with us. and we guaranteed them $0. And then just did a profit share model. So anything
Mhm.
that we made on the tour, we just split it. And we were shockingly able to pay people at the end, which was kind of a surprise. I think halfway through the tour, CBC got in a van and followed us for a while. So I think we were just kind of
That's
lucky to
amazing.
generate some press in our first year.
Yeah.
And then after that tour, everyone just said, you have to make this an organization, you have to make this official. And that's when became sort of the development of grant writing and fundraising properly. And then each year, I mean, we really grew very, very small. So each year, just taking that step higher and higher. And then, by the end, we're able to fundraise enough that we're engaging people on proper, equity contracts and ACTRA when we did the film. So it just was a step by step process of getting there. But really that first step is just a project. I think
Yeah.
growing things from grassroots is really the best way to go, and the reason why people agreed to do it for free is because they believed in the vision and they were excited for the adventure. So I think it's about
Mhm.
just getting in touch with the right colleagues.
Yeah, surrounding yourself with people who share those same beliefs and are equally passionate, I think that's a really, really powerful thing, especially in a world where we can be a bit divided. It
Mm-hmm.
feels that way anyways at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Either of the Shauns, do you want to jump in and react to what Larissa said and say if you share kind of that origin story?
Yeah.
You first, Shaun.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I uh, feel, as Larissa said, when that idea was sort of first forming, I certainly didn't think that I was embarking into a huge project or like, how do I get a board of directors and blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
And uh, it was just, could this work? Like, would people want to see this? How is it going to look? Who can I get involved? And so the main focus was just on trying to do one show. And fortunately, at the time there was a kind of queer performance space, gallery performance space here in Kensington Market called VideoFag, which was run by Jordan Tannehill and William Ellis, who were partners at the time, and they like slept in the back and then ran this. They just had this like amazing queer performance space, and it was really inspiring. And I would go to events there often, and when I started to get the idea for the Queer Songbook Orchestra, we call it the QSO just for short. So if I refer to that, um, you know what I'm talking about. Uh, when this all was kind of coming together, I thought, well, if we're going to do a show, I want to do it there at
Right.
that space. And it's hardly bigger than my bedroom that I'm in right now. It was a small space that the band and PA took up half the room, and then we could fit like 35 people in there. But that was enough. We did two shows every weekend, and that was enough to see, okay, this does work. It does mean something. I have to keep going.
Right.
And then it was a matter of, okay, how do I book another show? Because I never booked a show or like done any
Yeah.
of that kind of stuff. I just would always get the call to come play shows. And so like curating a set and commissioning arrangements was a big thing because our music, similar to what Shaun was saying, is it's all uh, arrangements of existing pop songs. So
Mhm.
but luckily I knew a lot of people already who I really respected as arrangers, so I could call them up. But also like the bicycle project, we didn't have any money. Uh, I'd never written a grant before. So, but what I did have was a line of credit. So the early days of it, I was just like, well, I want to do this and I'll figure it out later.
Mhm.
So paying people initially off that line of credit. The first show we did for charity, so we gave them any proceeds to charity. And yeah, I just was really committed to it, so decided that's what I'm gonna do. And I don't necessarily recommend starting a project on your line of credit.
Yeah.
And we can talk more about, I'm totally open about the finances and
I'd like to,
personal
yeah.
kind of cost of that. So I'm happy to get into that later too. But I don't necessarily recommend starting a project on your line of credit,
Hmm.
but I also don't necessarily not do it because I know if I hadn't
Yeah.
done that, this wouldn't exist,
Right.
what we did. And it took me a long time to pay off that
Yeah.
um, that debt, but eventually I was able to, and we've been able to do a lot of beautiful stuff out of that sort of original. I kind of thought of it, I said earlier I didn't get into school, but that would have been like an investment in my
Hmm.
future in another education.
Right.
But instead, I kind of made a similar investment into this new project, which I don't have another degree from to show, but
Right.
I feel similar that I got this whole other education.
Hmm.
And I just invested kind of in myself to make that happen.
Yeah.
So, and I was able to pay it off with the experience I earned
Right.
from doing all that stuff. So it was kind of like just going back to school,
Right.
but it was a very self-directed project that I didn't have an advisor or like any professors to ask how do you do this?
Right.
Um,
That's really beautiful. I again thank you for sharing that and thank you for your honesty because I think it's these stories are the ones that we don't hear so much in our education like through an academic institution. It's these types of things that I think are really helpful for young musicians who have ideas but have no idea how to start. Like what is that first step?
yeah.
Shaun, for you, what was what was that first step? You clearly had addressed the gap. The gap was wide and you knew that something needed to fill it. I might also mention I'm gonna hype Shaun up here. He's written I think 3 books already on Black representation in theater and the arts. He's also written an entire opera for the COC. He's amazing. He's making
Amazing.
huge contributions that he won't tell you about himself. So these are great things. But tell us a little more, Shaun, about your experience with that, just getting going with Pops of Color.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's so funny, and it's like what they say, right? Hindsight is 2020, right? Like it's
Mhm.
and it's also not, right? Like
Yeah.
I mean, the hardest thing was it's so interesting being in the moment when the thing exists, when you finally sort of step into, and I'm curious, Shaun, Larissa, how you both felt about it, like at your in the starting of it. Like for me, it was the moment of sort of standing on a stage, like looking at this thing that I had talked about, and not just talked about, but had like petitioned, I guess maybe is the right word, and advocated for, and for so long, right? Because the idea, I mean, I've been sitting on the idea now for it had been like 7 years, right? Almost, it was like a long time of just being like, hey, I think this is something that could work. And it was a lot of, I think honestly, the first start of it was really that. It was just how many conversations can I have with, not only thinking across sort of thinking, a phrase I've been have heard recently and have been using a lot recently is like thinking laterally, like
Hmm.
how much it has been, trying to think, okay, who are people that are already within my orbit that I can reach out to sort of float this and be like, hey, like this is my idea. What do you think? And be honest, right? And people would be, and just you hear that so many times where people would just be like, I mean, yeah, of course that's a fantastic, like no one was like, they're like, of course it's a great idea. Of course something like this should exist. Like, and it's nice to at least exist in that. To one, I think, yeah, that like to be validated in at least not thinking that you're just trying to concoct something that shouldn't exist or doesn't need to exist or won't be able to give something back. But it was also, and this, as was just mentioned um before, is this idea of how do you keep going,
Hmm.
right? Because I think that, and I mean, I never wanted to own a business. I never wanted to run a business. I like I still I still try not to as much as possible. Like I do believe as a leader, the best thing, the way that I've described it, especially since it's been created, is I like to think of myself just sort of as like the birthing channel of it. And now I'm like, I've put all of the energy into creating the thought of this. And now you have to surround yourself with people who are ultimately going to be smarter at you in every way, who are going to be able to take and move your idea or and frankly like their idea once it becomes that forward, right? So
Mm.
it was such a messy, like how do you figure it out? And I was like, okay, do I start the company first? And it was like, it was just honestly, for a lot of it was just years of talking to people and trying to reach out to other organizations who, people would say, find the people who are doing the thing that you want to be doing. And
Mhm.
if you can't find them, find the people who are as close to that as possible and ask them what they think. And so it was a lot of that, and other conductors would tell me the same. They say, look, I didn't expect to start an orchestra, like, ooh, it's weird. It's like, yeah, and also because our framing, and especially my framing, was just like, but an orchestra is a place that like exists in a building in a city that you go to and people pay for, and that there's so much already, so much structure around how our organizations should exist, right? And the reality is it's hard to think about that when we're coming into it as artists and as creative thinkers sometimes, I think, because I wasn't thinking about it as like, how do I create the organization? I was just like, I just want to figure out how the thing can exist. And
Mhm.
so it was interesting to have those chats and just be like, okay, great. Like, have you ever thought, or do you even just know what the difference of a profit versus a nonprofit is, and find,
Mhm.
all of those sorts of journeys, right? And I do, everyone, it was always the thing where everyone's like, when it needs to happen, it'll happen. And you hear that forever, and it's the most useful advice and not useful advice at all, because it
Yeah.
doesn't lend itself at all to the version of like, okay, but like, what is the actual, what is the tactical, like, how am I going to get pen to paper and actually have this exist? But
Right.
the reality is, the more that you talk about it and the more that you are just doing it and it is out there, and that people can also share in that excitement with you, the closer it gets. And then eventually,
Right.
enough people just say yes,
Right.
and just enough of the dominoes fall that it starts to happen. And that was certainly the case. That was certainly the case for me with the orchestra, for sure.
So I think what I'm hearing thematically from all three of you is that, it took a lot of time. None of this was an overnight process. And something I want to ask the three of you who are all already been incredibly honest, is, what part did rejection play in this process? To me, you all have such amazing projects. Like, I mean, Shaun, you're helping youth people across the country, across the world feel understood, feel loved, feel like they're part of a community. Shaun, you're helping people who are often out of the spotlight be in the spotlight as they deserve. And Larissa, you're bringing opera to people who never would otherwise have a chance to hear it, and also using it to talk about current issues that are a real problem in our society. Like, these are amazing mandates, but I know from my own experiences that I'm sure you all experienced a fair amount of rejection in this process, of whether it's grants or people saying, no, I don't think this is going to work or whatever. So I kind of want to open to the floor to whoever wants to jump in on that. Like, what part does rejection play, whether it's, what you learned from rejection earlier in your career that applied to these projects, or what happened with these projects and how did that kind of shape your trajectory? I see Shaun Brodie's mouth is moving, so he's gonna he's gonna go first. You're also polite. Feel free to jump in.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, my project was kind of born out of rejection that I mentioned earlier, of trying to go to journalism school, which I should note, journalism was never going to give me a stable job
Mm.
either. Like, hindsight's 2020, as Shaun was saying,
Yeah.
and I'm like, what? Why was I trying to go from music to journalism? It wasn't going to give me any more of a secure life, but that was it was a real blow, because I was a little overconfident, I guess, in sending in that application. I thought, oh, I have great ideas. They're going to want to have me, and I really sort of was putting all my eggs in that basket. So that was a big rejection. I felt it in a big way. But then once the idea for the QSO started to come around, I wasn't really looking to someone for approval.
Hmm.
I was putting something together like grassroots with my friends and seeing if it was going to resonate with the community, but I wasn't asking permission. Or in those early days, I guess with my kind of self-financing the early days with the line of credit that I wasn't I didn't say, "Oh, I'll if we get this grant, I'll do it." I just thought, well, as I said earlier, I'm pretty shy, but I'm also pretty stubborn. So I just decided I'm going to do this, and I'm not asking permission. All I'm asking for is if do you to the world, like, do you want this? Should I keep doing this? And so that kind of got me to a point of seeing, okay, I should be doing this. It is important. And then the rejections that came after that, I just figured
Right.
it out from there. Like, yeah, we didn't get that funding, or this, we're not getting booked by this person or whatever. That was more like, whatever, just let that go.
Right.
So, but it was that main rejection was crucial because then this never would have happened without that rejection.
Right.
So,
So it was kind of it was a blessing in disguise, right? At the time, you don't necessarily know, but look what
exactly.
came out of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible project that is going to have an impact forever. So I'm glad they rejected you from journalism school.
Me too. I've thought I'm so grateful
Yeah.
for because I like my life now and
Yeah.
it would be totally different if they had let me in. So,
Yeah. Larissa, Shaun, either of you have similar experiences?
Um, I briefly read through the sort of questions like that you sort of said you might be touching on some of these last night, and like I was with my husband who's also a musician and also a singer, and the two of us just like laughed like, what do you mean rejection? Like, we're in music, of course we've all experienced rejection. Like, that's just part of the deal. And I feel like I've experienced like personal rejection from like, auditions, and I think it's so hard when you're auditioning for roles and stuff too as a singer, because um you feel so personal about it, and there's like those dream roles, or I would be perfect for this, like why can't they
Hmm.
see it? And then you just so rarely, as an artist, I'm sure any discipline, any instrument, you so rarely get the work in the thing that you really want. Or I was even thinking about in opera school, like a particular, it's like what your voice type is. Like, this is,
Right.
there's not just soprano, there's like what type of soprano, which is therefore what type of roles and composers you're
Hmm.
best suited for. And it's so specific, and it's just laughable because when you get to the real world, like, have you ever really been hired for your exact voice type? Like, no, you get hired for the things you're hired for, and then you just have to make it work. Like, some of the things that you end up doing are absolutely ridiculous.
Hmm.
um but in terms of rejection, I was thinking, before I think I started in high school, one of my jobs was fundraising. And I used to be one of those people that knocked on doors for Amnesty International and Doctors
Yeah.
Without Borders. And I would knock on people's doors and ask them to give me money. And
Hmm.
so I got very, very used to like literal doors slammed in my face. And
It's a
I
tough
found,
job.
right, and I found it actually very easy. I just kind of got in this zone, and it made me realize that when you're advocating for something outside yourself that's bigger, like for all three of us, our organizations, it's not really like a selfish, like
Right.
this, like I didn't do
yeah.
like opera like really for myself, partly of course for the performing opportunities, but it's kind of like believing in the idea and the community of people. So I
Yeah.
got very brave at just calling up like music festivals and saying, you should hire us and put us on your summer program. And we're like X thousand of dollars to bring us in, and we're great.
Right.
Which I don't think I ever would have done for myself if it was just myself
Mhm.
as an artist. So I think
Right.
that that has been really helpful in terms of rejection, is you can sort of almost like feel like you're like the mama bear,
Mm. You're hyping
advocating.
the people that you love too, right?
Yeah,
It's
it's
like
like
you,
kind of for them. Like we need to pay these artists decent fees, and to
yeah.
get there, we need people to support the group. So I think that that's been extremely helpful. And I wish I could go back to myself as a young singer and be like, just apply that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Shaun, I want to hear from you. Mace, I want to hear from you as well. Before I do, I just want to mention again to all our participants, if you have questions, please pop them in the Q&A. Um, Clearly, our panelists are very generous. They're open books. So this is your chance to ask them anything you like. You can direct it at one person or direct it at the group. And we'll get to those about in the last 20 minutes or so. We will also, I do have some sort of more specific financial questions I'm going to get to before the Q&A, but Shaun, what did you want to add about the rejection? We've chatted about this before, so
Oh
I would love to
man.
hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing with, and I wish that we talked about this more. We touched on this a couple times in terms of training and
Right.
going through music school or conservatory or however we all got to where we are as musicians. I mean, I think that the thing that we don't talk about with rejection is how where the Venn diagram occurs in terms of dealing with rejection and also the journey of understanding and knowing yourself
Right.
and being okay with yourself, right? Not even that's not the best way to put it, but being affirmative in yourself. And it's life stuff too, that takes time, right? It really does to sort of exist for a minute to be like, cool, this is actually what I believe in, and not everyone is always going to think the same thing as me, and that's also okay, right? We're not all here to do the same thing. That's fine.
Right.
But for me, I mean, I definitely a big yes to everything that you both just said, and I think that for me, the ability to step into acknowledging more personal rejection makes you fearless in being able to advocate for the thing that you are really investing your entire your entire heart into, right? For me, that journey was very linked with the I say personal, but I use the personal in the sense of like my career and my journey exclusively, right? And
Right.
I tell people all the time, I mean, it's so funny because we don't talk about it that often, right?
Hmm.
Everyone sees the success, right?
Well, and
Whatever that
social media is so bad for that, right? That's all you see is everybody else's highlight reels.
it's frankly, well, honestly, most of the reasons why I really hate it. I mean, I
Yeah.
enjoy, I think that it has incredible value in terms of being able to be a platform for inspiration, for sharing, you know, collectively what we do. And that's the way I try and approach it in terms of myself, is just being like, okay, I I don't need to tell people what I'm doing, but I feel that I'm like, at least if there's someone out there who's like, cool, I'm really grateful I saw that because this is going to help me do my own thing. I'm like, cool, I
Yeah.
can get over my unease and I can figure it out. But I mean, yeah, we've all been there, and there's so many moments of yeah, even school was one of those journeys. When I went back to do my master's, I auditioned for every program under the sun as far as music. I wanted to do a degree specifically in conducting and in musical theater conducting, and I had spent all of the years leading up to that moment with, frankly, even many mentors who were very close to me, teachers who I had who were like, you're never going to do that because you have too much of this, or you're too much that, or you're too energetic, or etc., whatever the reasons were.
Hmm.
And I got rejected from programs because of my skill level, and or it was just like, we're going to take this person over you, and you're both great, but who knows why
Yeah.
decisions get made, etc., etc., etc. And I've been fired from, I mean, as I say, I've played in numerous Broadway pits. When we talk about even just in my theater life specifically, I've played in numerous Broadway pits. as a substitute and have done the thing around. And I've been let go from shows where I was like, yep, I tried to, I tried to do a thing and give somebody what I think they needed and it wasn't it. And I was like, that's fine, and
Mhm.
I like to tell people, I mean, the irony now is that it's weird because I had been conditioned with so much. When you get conditioned with rejection, at a certain point, then you get to a point in your career, you're like, but wait a minute, what? Like, I was able to do this all along, right? And so even though I've been fired from the doing the highest level of the work that I do, I'm now the highest music. I'm the music supervisor of the most successful musical literally that's ever existed on the planet, right? And in and again for me that's just that is irrelevant in as much as it's only relevant because that was my story, and I
Mhm.
get to kind of look at that in hindsight and say, yeah, like I've always in humility tried to be what I can be and do what I can do to help people. And I think I've always, I've worked hard to acquire a skill in order to do that and share that with people. And so
Right.
that's what feeds my work in creating Pops of Color as an organization, is that I said, look, like I I'm not going to be great at everything, but also I don't have to be. I can hone my craft and I can focus in and be good at the things that I know I can do.
Right.
And how do I use those things to create something that is going to be better for all of us and also help an entirely newly built community of people not deal with the same nonsense that I dealt with? Because then
Right.
there's that, right? Then there's the level of it that it just was that sometimes nepotism does happen in our
Yeah.
industry. Sometimes people just want to work with their friends, and there is literally no other explanation for it other than that. And so I
Yes.
said, great, well, if that's my experience, at least I can utilize that in some form and do my best as a leader to try and make sure as many people as possible don't have to experience that over and over again.
Yeah, I've literally gotten chills at least once while all three of you were talking. So again, thank you so much for sharing and being so honest because I think this is really what we need to hear. It's so easy to get to look at an organization like one of yours and say, "Oh, I could never do that." That's like way beyond my ability. But to know that, someone who also thought they could never do it has done it is really, really, really something special. Our Q&A is starting to heat up, and I want to make sure we have time for those questions. So I wanted to ask just two last questions. And the first one is a little bit of a specific one because we've been talking fairly abstract. For the three of you, how do you get funding when you have projects that are so large? Like, QSO, for example, Shaun, I think is 14, sometimes more people. Larissa, you've got a whole company of people. Shaun, you've got a whole orchestra. Obviously, you can't rely on just one source of funding when you have to fairly pay that many people. What's been your approach and what have been your learnings there? Uh, Larissa, do you want to jump in?
Sure. I mean, it's just like as many different sources. You just need diversity of revenue streams. You need to keep trying. So, like for granting, you need to apply to all three levels: municipal, provincial, and federal. They all need to fund you at the same
Right,
time, and then there's foundations, there's individual donors, and then we also do, like I mentioned, performing at festivals and stuff. So revenue from presenters themselves, and then ticket sales. And then it all couples together into
right.
a big pool. For our film, we were able to get one of the very, very large grants from the federal government during the pandemic when they injected a bunch of money for artists. So we got one of the Digital Now grants. So that was,
Amazing.
$100,000 grant, which that's a big grant, and so that was able to get us going. And the film was like almost double that. So we still had to do cobbling like we always do, but that was, I mean, a large amount that was just granted to us, and that's kind of a rare. Normally the grants are
Right,
not that large. That's just because of pandemic and trying to help artists overcome that. But that's really it's a pretty simple answer. Just
right.
diversify, see as many different streams as you can.
But I'm sure, like, even with that, obviously, like you said, it's not a regular event that we have those kinds of grants, but part of why you were able to get it was because you knew what you wanted to do already, right? When that
Right.
opportunity came up. you said, "Oh, we have this idea, let's roll with it." And I think that's a
Yeah.
beautiful part of the process too, is like some you never know what opportunity is going to come up, but if you really know what your values are and what you're trying to accomplish, it's much easier to take advantage of those opportunities when they do come out of nowhere,
Yeah.
right?
And we had had that idea for 2 years before that those grants came out, so we were kind of ready to roll when
Right.
they were announced. Yeah, yeah.
What about for you, Shaun, Brodie, Shaun? What about for QSO? You sort of alluded earlier to obviously the funding model has changed from a line of credit.
Yeah, yeah, it changed. I mean, exactly what Larissa said. We have done all those same avenues with the public funding and the three tiers of public funding, and obviously ticket sales and presenter fees and donors and that. And similarly, we not during the pandemic, but in 2017, Canada's 150th, the government put a larger fund into the Canada Council. So we were able to get one of those. They were called
Hmm.
New Chapter grants
Mm.
uh, that time. So we got one of those. And the kind of purpose was that to fund big ideas that you couldn't normally do.
Right.
Right.
So our idea was to tour across Canada to
Mhm.
smaller cities where there's less queer visibility, and to take this show, so we toured from Whitehorse in the Yukon to St. John's in Newfoundland.
Wow.
Um, not we didn't stop in Toronto or Montreal or Vancouver. We were doing like
Mhm.
Swift Current and uh, yeah, Fredericton and you know, uh, not not the big ticket kind of cities. And so that was amazing to have. I think we had to get a little bit of extra funding to make that happen, but just to be given, like, present an idea and be like, okay, we like your idea, go ahead and do it.
Right.
And there was less of the struggle to like piece it together with all that. We also, through that same funding, where another facet of it was to create a stop motion animation,
Hmm.
which the song you're playing off the top was the song we used in that animation. It's on our website if people want to see it. Just look under the animation tab.
Go check it out. It is beautiful. It's really
Mm.
beautiful, Shaun.
It was really a really wonderful project to work on. Great animation team and um, yeah. So it was such a gift to just have these ideas, put them on paper, and then be told, okay, here's money, go and do it.
Right.
Um, but that's rare.
Yeah.
you know, Pandemic funding. Canada turns 150.
Hmm.
So those aren't everyday grants. So it really is. And QSO we don't adhere to like a regular season schedule or doing this many shows every year. It's a little bit like we do stuff when there's an idea, when we have the funding, when we can make it work. Everyone is doing other projects, and
Hmm.
I still have to do other work to, you know, um, make ends meet, because it is so many people involved and
Right.
all that. So yeah, it's always a challenge, and just like the availability of people when it's so many people involved and
Yeah.
all the marketing and blah blah blah. So yeah, it's still a project that exists kind of um, when it's able to happen. And we started our own youth orchestra in
Hmm.
2022. We got a larger grant for that as well, but that was very all-consuming in terms of
Right.
having to figure that out and work with so many students and parents and the communication and all that. And we were able to hire some extra staff
Amazing.
for half a year, to kind of get that off the ground. But it since has kind of been on a hiatus because it's such a challenge to keep that level of something going and the funding needed
Right.
and the staff. So yeah, the funding,
Up and down.
I'm still trying to figure it out,
Yeah.
to be honest, and how to make it consistent and long-term viable.
Shaun, other Shaun, for you, I mean, you're in the States too, which makes it a little bit different because you're dealing with a very different, I'm guessing, arts economy, financial structure. So can you speak quickly to what it's like there for you with Pops of Color?
Yeah, I mean it's very interesting, and I was going to say just that comparison, right? Because we're starting to have these conversations now with doing it on the Canadian side of the border, and it's great to we're very fortunate, right, in terms of our the versions of our support and the structures of that support. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't come without its difficulty, of course, but we're fortunate, and as Canadians, and I think that I will say that it's been very, very eye-opening for one, and it is, as Shaun, as you just said, it's a process. Like it is truly, it's never ending, right? And I think
Right.
that's one of the things as you create an organization, again, that folks also don't talk about in this regard is just how much of the work is truly that. And it
Right.
is that, right? Even for in our instance with orchestras, that's literally the name of the game, right? But when we talk again about organizations and how organizations come to be and are structured, right? There are arguably more structures in place over a longer period of time when an orchestra has existed in a city and is like, great, here is our community and here's what and so for us it was trying to examine what that like what the pre-existing structure looks like and overlay it as best as possible on top of what we were going to do, but also recognize where there was not going to be overlay that matched, and just
Hmm.
being like, okay, we've just got to find our own way. And further to talking about the difference of it in the States as well, another thing you have to think about, and certainly this has been part of the journey for me and for us now as an organization, is just considering all of the different levels of, particularly when your work is invested in and directed around social justice
Hmm.
in some regard, right? Which all of this is. It's thinking about, okay, so what is feeding that, right? And I think that there are arguments to be made about where any money comes from that comes together to support a collective, a common collective, right? Something that you decide you're
Yeah.
trying to do. But that also is it's a different it's a journey, right? You have to consider and think about, great, if I have to rely more on private funding, which sometimes in the States is going to be a slightly different model to go into,
Right.
because to be very direct, we are not going to get funding from the federal government as an organization right now that
Right.
we have literally received emails from the federal government saying cease and desist as a DEI organization, right? So
So sorry.
so that is an avenue that's not going to be explored. That doesn't mean that that's going to be the case for every level of government, but it
Right.
does mean that it just completely, you have to be able to situate yourself in a moment and say, okay, great, if this is going to continue to exist, or you're going to continue to try and find ways in, how do you do that? And how do you do that in a way that also makes you feel like you have an ability to wake up in the morning and go to bed at night and still feel good about what you're doing, and not
Right.
not not I don't want to say sell it out, but
Yeah.
you have to be comfortable with that, right? And I think if you are as well, and you try and search for that, again, I'm not saying that's perfect or we've mastered this completely, we certainly have not, but I think the more that you at least have those conversations, which we have been having around where's that funding going to come from, we can just drill down even more on, like, great, it's good to
Yeah.
know that we are what we are and this is what we believe in, and we're going to try and do that by the books as much as possible, as well as in practice and theory on stage, right? Because
Right.
it's there's so much, those are huge conversations systematically about thinking about, well, where does support come from and how is that done? And like it's thinking about and that's what creating something like this does, is it forces you to think about every single step of the way. Like when I started out, I was just like, oh, I just want to make sure that, our orchestra librarians and our orchestrators and arrangers are people of color too. But then you start to just like go deeper and deeper and deeper, and you're like, yeah, this is structural, organizational stuff we have to also consider and think about in terms of how you want to structure it and what you want it to be. And ultimately, it is really only your choice. So, you have to kind of make big decisions in that regard.
Mhm.
Sometimes with the funding they get made for you, right? But we've been fortunate in that regard. And again, I think it's the combo of like when the funding and all of the right things meet, then you're off to a good start, right? So never easy,
And
but
I'm and I imagine too, it often, in my experience, it's come down to the beginning, at least, finding partner organizations who are willing to give you things in kind. Like whether it's space or staff or whatever,
yes,
like that they will pay so that you can have that part of your budget covered.
very
And then
much
you
so.
forge those relationships and you build new community, you get new ticket sellers or ticket
Very
buyers,
much
sorry,
so.
and all those things.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to get to the public questions, but before I do that, the very last thing I want to ask the three of you, so this is a rapid fire, like 30-second to a minute answer. A two-part question. So, first part of the question is, what is your definition of success right now? And has it changed from when you were, 18 years old embarking on your studies? I'm going to start with Larissa.
Okay. Yes, it has changed. So I was like, oh yeah, when I graduate, I'm gonna just do art song tours throughout Europe, obviously.
Yep.
That changed. And I would say it sounds maybe like really cliche, but it's just being happy. Like I think that's what it is. So I think for everyone, I mean, I'm a parent now. I have two school-aged, like young kids, 5 and 7. And I'm just so grateful that I get to have a bit of work life balance. I get to spend
Hmm.
a lot of time with my kids because I largely make my own hours. Unless
Hmm.
I'm like really deep on in a project, then I don't see them as much. But for the most part, my daily life, I get a lot of time with my kids, and my husband and I have like staggered schedules. So they're not with a lot of caregivers, which is amazing. And I get to do music every day and work with my students and collaborate with them and work with the community and work with artists. And so I would say it's just being happy in that and being really grateful that I get to choose those things and make music be a part of my daily life.
Beautiful. I love that. Shaun, Brodie, definition of success, and has it changed since you were 18?
Also has changed drastically. Yeah. I mean, as I said earlier on, I thought I wanted to be an orchestral player, and that was what was going to make me happy. And what I found is that happiness and like a feeling of success is so much beyond that and just life stuff. I mean, how I would look at it now is the sort of community that's formed around this idea that I had and how I've seen it affect people and touch people and
Yeah.
have them feel seen. And we're kind of collecting stories from people all the time, and so it's people will often cry in the audience, but laugh and cry in the audience on stage. I've been in the kind of center of all these really moving sort of moments with our shows, and even if it isn't something that we're able to do every month or is like sustainable in these more consistent ways, I still see it as a success because of what we've been able to do and where we've been able to take it and
Yeah.
all the many, many, many collaborators we've been able to work with from like 9 years old to 86 years old, or like a really broad range of collaborators and community that's kind of I refer to the sort of extended QSO family that
Mhm.
really does stretch all across the country. So I mean
Yeah.
that's success to me. And the decisions I've made, you can't know where things are leading, but um, it's led to other work that I've been able to uh, have and work with amazing people. And it led me to meeting my partner, who I love very much. Like I know if I'd not gone this route and taken that leap early on, that I wouldn't I would have some other life. I don't know what that looks like,
Yep.
but I like this life how it looks now and what I've been able to gain from those decisions I made and the kind of trust that I had in myself.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, that's success, I think, to me.
100%. 100%. And we'll wrap up before we get to our Q&A. Shaun, Mays, definition of success, and has it changed since you were 18?
Oh man, I knew this was going to be a tough one. I was like the whole time, I was like, oh man, here it comes. Um, I think actually in reflection on this, I think it has changed in some ways and it hasn't in some.
Mm.
I think there are elements of when I reflect on my work now and where I started my journey, and I think just what I've always wanted out of life. I think foundationally, I still feel that I feel blessed, and I believe that I'm in a place to use what I do and what I try and create every day to try and just reach people and help people try and think a little bit more about something or why we're all here or what we're doing. And again, we all have our different reasons for choosing art and music for doing that. And I'd like to hope I really pray that'll be the through line through my whole life, regardless of what I end up doing. um but of course, the version of the success and how I was going to get there or do that has absolutely changed, and it has grown and it has expanded, and so I do feel that it's absolutely shifted, and I think that, sort of revisiting this earlier mention I had about how it just takes time to get to step into yourself and be like, who am I, and what do I need, and what am I doing here, and I love what I do, but I love my family and the people who spend all their time loving me more than I love what I do, right? I'm fortunate to have built, I've built a life with my wife, and I travel out on the road all the time, and it's just there's nothing that I could do for, aside from her and our families and all of the life things that we have built together, and that we have. There's this what we do only feeds who we are as people, right, at our foundation, and all the rest of it. Again, it is a cycle, but
Yeah.
your people are everything, and so I'm grateful to be in a spot, I think, now where, again, like, yeah, I can just try and find some balance in my life, and one of the quotes that one of my supervisors, as in my master's thesis, as the last thought on this, he said years back, he used to say to all of us, all we wanted to do is go out and do work and be like in the thing and go out and see every show, and he said, take time to be people, go to a museum, go do something unrelated to, I was like, why would you say that? Like how are we gonna like upload all this? And it is like, that is what makes you good at what you do, because it enables you to exist in the thing that you love and dedicate yourself to it fully, but it also enables you to walk away from it when you need to. And that's equally, if not more important, in my brain, I think.
I can't imagine a better way to have finished that conversation. That was absolutely poetic. And I think so true. And I love the themes of what you all said. It's so much, it is about connection, whether it's connection with your audiences, your students, or with the people in your life. And I think that's one thing that's easy to forget when you're in music school or training to be an artist, is we get so tied up in the perfection of the craft that we forget that the whole point is to connect with people and hopefully make them feel something, right? That's what music does. So thank you to the three of you. I mean, you've been absolutely perfect panelists. You've been so honest, so open, so generous with your advice and information. I am going to pass, excuse me, I'm going to go over to our QA now because we've got a lot of questions and I want to get to as many as we can. Um, Someone did ask, this is a good question for everybody. Will we be able to see the recordings later? Absolutely, yes. They're going to be going up on YouTube, I would say within a week to 2 weeks after the conference, and they will be up indefinitely, as will all the videos from our past years. So make sure you check those out as well. Okay, so let's pick one. I'm going to maybe point one question to each of you so that we can get to a bunch of them. Let's start. Uh, okay. Thanks to all of you for doing this. We really appreciate it. This comes from an anonymous attendee. They ask, as a singer-songwriter trying to connect with other similar artists, festivals, or performing opportunities, what would you say is the best way to connect with people who have no idea who you are? Emailing their website, Instagram messaging, thanks for your wisdom. Who wants to take this one? Just throw your hand up. Oh, you're all muted.
No one wants to take it.
I know you all know how to do this. So. All right, Larissa, you got this one?
All right. I mean, look for a mutual friend, see if they'll do a quick little like introduction for you. And if you're, I think this person said they're an artist like themselves, have
Yeah.
the shortest video. That's honestly make it so easy for them to click on it because they don't know who you are. They might not have the time to see if they're going to read multi-paragraph email. So just
Hmm.
give them a link right away. Like, this is me and this is who I am. And good luck.
So you would say basically having some media available of your work is
Yeah, like
pretty
really
critical.
quick, easy. Yeah.
Okay, that's a great answer. Thanks for answering that one, Larissa, and thank you for the question. Um, okay, let's go to another one here. Since all of you, this is from Harry Bardos, since all of you have started a community and organizations, how hard was it to pull together the various artists and their cliques to build a community to build each other up and create a scene to get revenue and grants and grow? I find some artists have their camps, and it seems it may be difficult to navigate the clique. Have you experienced this?
Hmm.
Shaun Mays, I saw some nodding.
I would say that I think I just go back to sort of this theme I've touched on of finding your people, right? And there's going to be I think the cool thing is if you are doing this if you're building something in conjunction with building your own community, if you are you and what you're doing and you're building your community at the same time as building, a structural community, you know who your people are, right? So I think if you draw on that, I mean, maybe this isn't the most direct answer to it, but if you draw on that, I think that you have a more and think laterally, right, in terms of the people who you already have in your circles. I think you have a higher chance of hopefully creating a group or whatever, however you're going to put it together of folks who align with your vision and you're just your sentiment, right, with your heart. And I in trusting in that, I have actually always feared that to be the case a little bit more, particularly just in this realm of orchestral music. But what I found when I got into it was I was actually like, oh, most of us are actually just already trying to do the same thing anyway. So most of us are kind of already of the same sentiment and are just like cool people that also want to do other, try and do other foundational stuff. So it's you will get it. And it's like anything in any organization, you just have to work through who you're going to work with. But I think you just try and keep aligning yourself with your people and looking side to side at where those people are already surrounding you as well.
I will just add to that too. I think, Shaun, like, I don't know if you experience this in school, but I am a classically trained flute player. And I'm sure this is true in singing too, Larissa, like there's this sense of always competition. Like even if you're not that kind of person, which I'm not, this idea that like we're all competing for the same stuff. So I think sometimes it can kind of feel like scary to that there might not be other people who have that same desire as us and we can't work together. I don't know if you experience that a little bit as a singer, but I think if you can find if you can recognize that we all are often working towards the same goals and actually if we work together it can be easier. I think that's a beautiful way to think about it anyway. That helps me.
I just think like that's just noise and it's just not
Hmm.
important. Like I think it's just like what Shaun was saying, like it's like go with your heart. What do you want to create? Like, I think the question was phrased something about navigating cliques. Like, you don't have to navigate cliques. Like,
Mm,
Yeah.
you don't have to do that. You don't have to think like, how do I fit in and make myself have this piece of this value? You were kind of saying, Lara, but you don't actually have to worry about that. Just
mhm.
drop that from your mind and just focus on like, what do I want to do and who do I want to work with? And they can just say yes or no.
Right. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you for that question. Let's find another one. This is a question from Emma Q. She asks, how would you pitch an event to get it started? I'm now trying to start a concert series and I'm in contact with venue salespeople. Coming from the conservatory bubble, I'm pretty unaware of what they might be looking for when approached with an opportunity like this. Do you have any advice on navigating that when pitching a new event? So getting your project, getting somebody to say, okay, yeah, we'll present you. Do any of you have advice on how you would navigate that conversation? Shaun, Brodie, I see intense nodding. Let's go to you.
Yeah, well, I haven't, I feel like it's my turn, so I can um, take one. But yeah, I would kind of echo some of what Larissa said earlier about trying to have a concise pitch, something that shows what the project is and its strengths and how it might be unique and add to the, the festival or the series or whatever it might be. Um, that kind of like elevator pitch or like we have well, I guess everyone's kind of should have like your EPK, your electronic press kit, that is an easy link you can send out to people that has, reviews and videos and all that kind of like packaged together. So it makes it easier for a presenter to reference and see what it is that you do, and then just try to represent your project in the best way in that package. Um, Again, focusing on what's kind of like unique about it. I wanted to add something to the previous question too,
Mhm.
if I may, which just is, I think, because I spent many years as a freelancer, we all spent many years doing our other stuff before starting our own projects. And I think to keep in mind, like to be the best collaborator, bandmate, person in the orchestra, whatever, that you can be. So, like always approaching this with kindness, getting there on time, knowing your
Mhm.
parts, and just being a really reliable person. Because then when you want to start your own project and you inevitably have to call in favors and have people rely on you for stuff, you've already kind of built those relationships and have a bit of a reputation, hopefully, in that world for uh, being someone who people want to work with.
Right.
Because that, in our world of um, being referred, referrals and all that, it's like people won't necessarily want to refer you if they didn't have a good experience working with you. So,
Yep.
and it all kind of builds on those relationships.
Yep. Doing a good job and being a good colleague, those are the best, honestly, the best marketing. As an aside too, I'll add when you were talking about the EPK, obviously in the world of 2026, visuals are really important also when presenting something. So if you're putting something together, you want it to look sharp. If you have no graphic design skills, Canva is a great tool for doing that kind of thing. It's free. Like
Yes, I second
I have
that.
no graphic design skills and I've used it for many things to make them look way nicer than they would have as like a Google Doc or a Microsoft Word doc. So a great tip for anybody who's looking to make their
And they'll give
material shine.
a free subscription to, I can't remember if you have to be a nonprofit or a collective, but they will give you like really discounted or a free subscription for projects. So yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, that's a great. I actually didn't know that, so thank you for sharing. We're gonna do one last question in our last 3 minutes here. This is from Mike Carroll. For those who may have experienced crippling self-doubt, how did you overcome it, and how did you motivate yourself to keep going after facing rejection? I think that's a great, great question. We can end on that
I'm
one.
curious too, have any of you figured out how to overcome that? That's
Yeah.
I'm all ears.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing with that question is that it implies that we've solved having self-doubt, you
Mm.
know? And I describe I was having this conversation with my with Lori, my wife, the other day, and I was saying to her that I love conducting, particularly with orchestras. And the reason I love doing it is because every time I do it, it makes me feel like I don't know what I'm doing at all.
Yeah.
And it's an incredibly humbling thing to do something that even when people are like, you're really great at this, you still get in it and you're like, I don't know if I totally know how to drive this car. And
Yeah.
not in the like, I'm excited, like because I'm excited, but like literally like, oh, am I like I haven't learned all this yet, right? I haven't done all this. And so I and that's hard sometimes because now I'm a figure where I guess I'm people are like, yeah, we look up to you because you have a title and you do this and that. And I'm like, I don't know. I haven't figured it all out. I will never I'm never gonna step up onto any stage or in front of any group of people and say I'm the best at what I do or I know exactly like that's because otherwise what's the point in doing all this? That journey has to always continue. So I think that it's knowing that you will always there will always be some part of you that doesn't that there's always going to be that person in your brain from years back who is always like I can't do this or I don't know how to do this or I don't and then the best part about being an artist is that you just get reintroduced to work that forces you to just do it again and
And
you
like,
know
sorry.
you know
Okay, go ahead.
yeah, yeah,
Sorry, Shaun, I did not mean to
yeah.
cut you off
No,
at
no,
all.
no. Yeah, Larissa. Yeah,
Okay, I was just gonna say, like, and isn't it lucky that we're in a field where we get to keep learning? I just think it's so great. I mean, we're humans, and back to earlier with that question, it's just so funny because I think it's also about being younger and older. You sort of think, like, well, when I'm an adult, I will be like there's a plateau. I'll be done. I'll have
Mhm.
it figured out and our students look up to us that way as though we've arrived. There isn't any arrival point. We're still growing. We still have crippling self-doubt all the time, new challenges like can I pull this off? Wait, I have no idea what I'm doing at all with this. It's just part of human nature and I say to my students all the time who are working on their performing skills like the pros are nervous every single time they go on stage too. It's just that you've done it enough that you know you're going to be okay. Like you can rely on your skills, and even if it's not at your 100%, like it's pretty darn close because you've practiced that so much. But you're never like, oh, it's never easy. Mm-hmm.
I was just saying to someone, Lisha, the other day that I really thought that by now I would feel like an adult. I have a kid. Somehow still no. And I have a feeling I might get to the end of my life still not feeling like one.
Yeah.
Because it's true we are always learning. And I think also kind of adding to what Shaun said, I mean, nothing in life as a human is linear. Like there are moments you're going to feel really confident. There are moments you're going to feel like you have zero confidence. It's part of it is just trusting the process and going on the journey. And I think it's so valuable for, people who are starting on their journey to hear from the three of you who are incredibly accomplished, fantastic, wonderful musicians and human beings. To hear that you've also had those same doubts, still sometimes have those same doubts and struggles is really powerful. So I want to thank the three of you all for your time and wisdom and wonderful conversation this morning. I could talk to you for another 6 hours, but it's Saturday and you all have things to do. So thank you to our panelists. Thank you very much to everybody who attended for your thoughtful questions. I quickly glanced over at the chat and saw many words of gratitude to the three of you for what you've shared and how it's really helped our listeners this morning. So thank you. Thank you again also to Lauren Drew, our tech wizard in the background who's helping keep everything going. Before I say a final goodbye, I just want to remind everybody our next session starts at 12:30 with the same webinar link. So the link that you used to get here this morning, same link at 12:30. It's called Making Musicians, Shaping Humans, The Importance of Music Pedagogy. And it is a keynote speech from Beatrice Zawodnik, who is the directrice or the director of the Haute École de Musique in Geneva, so the sort of Geneva Music School. And she'll be reflecting on the broader social and human impact of music education, how it creates creative thinkers, collaborators, and most importantly, engaged citizens. So I think that's going to be a really, really interesting discussion and will, further underline that music has an incredibly transformative power, which we all know. I think that's why we're all here this morning. So please join us at 12:30. Again, if you missed it, you want to watch it again, you want to show it to someone else, this recording will be up in the next couple of weeks on our Where Music Leads YouTube channel. So thank you again to everybody. Thank you, Larissa and the Shauns. So grateful, such a privilege to chat with you. And I hope we'll get to chat again soon. Take care, everyone.
Thanks so
Thank you
much.
so much.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.